In the middle of the night on a deserted road outside Charleston, Jacob stands alone, listening to the laughter of his wife Allison and her friends fade into the darkness. She has taken his phone and wallet and thrown him away like a piece of trash. This is no joke, but a heartbreaking betrayal. But this night will ignite a fire in Jacob that will lead to just revenge. He suspected her, but he couldn't imagine who the lover was. This story is a bomb. Don't miss it, subscribe. Jacob Reed, 35, was a financial analyst in Charleston, South Carolina, living a life that ticked along like a well-oiled clock. His days were spent crunching numbers in a glass-walled office downtown, his evenings at the gym or on the couch with a craft beer, scrolling through spreadsheets or streaming a game. He and Allison, his wife of 7 years, had settled into a rhythm that felt comfortable, if not always warm. Allison, 33, was a rising interior designer, her Instagram filled with sleek furniture and vibrant client projects. She was the life of every room, her laugh bright, her energy magnetic. Jacob, by contrast, was steady, reliable, the guy who always had a plan. Their home, a modern condo near the Battery, was a testament to Allison's taste. Open plan, with exposed brick and curated art. But beneath the polished surface, cracks had started to show. Allison's wit, once charming, had sharpened into something cutting. She'd tease Jacob about his boring job, calling him Mr. Spreadsheets, in front of her friends, Lauren, Abby, and Sophie, who'd chuckle and pile on. "Jake, do you ever just let loose?" Lauren would say, smirking over a glass of rose. Jacob would force a smile, his chest tightening, but he'd brush it off. Love, he told himself, meant patience. He believed Allison's jabs were just stress, that she'd soften if he tried harder to fit in her world. Her friends didn't help. Lauren, a real estate agent with a knack for subtle shade, loved poking at Jacob's reserved nature. Abby, a freelance photographer, was louder, her jokes blunt but fleeting. Sophie, the quietest, worked in PR and seemed to watch more than she spoke, her eyes always scanning the room. Together, they were a clique that never fully let Jacob in. At dinners or rooftop bars, he felt like a guest at his own life, tolerated but not embraced. "You're so lucky to have Allison," Abby once said, her tone implying he was punching above his weight. He'd nod, swallowing the sting, telling himself it was just their dynamic, playful, not personal. Weekends were often spent with Allison's crowd, at brunches or low-country boils, where Jacob played the part of the dutiful husband. He'd carry the cooler, refill drinks, and laugh at the right moments, even when the jokes landed like darts. Allison would roll her eyes when he talked about work, redirecting the conversation to her latest project or a trip she wanted to plan. "Jake's just not a big-picture guy," she'd say, her smile tight. Her friends would giggle, and he'd join in, hating himself for it. He kept waiting for things to shift, for Allison to see in the way she used to, back when they'd stay up late talking about dreams, not just schedules. The tension wasn't new, but it had grown heavier in recent months. Allison spent more time with her friends, coming home late from client dinners that smelled faintly of wine and perfume. Jacob noticed but didn't push. He'd ask about her day, offer to cook, suggest a weekend getaway. She'd brush him off, saying she was swamped, that he wouldn't get it. He started to feel like a piece of furniture in their condo, functional but not cherished. Still, he held on, convinced that love was about weathering storms. He'd grown up in a small town outside Charleston, raised by parents who stuck it out through tough times. Quitting wasn't in his blood. That Saturday, they were headed to a family barbecue at Allison's parents' house in Mount Pleasant, a sprawling suburban home with a wraparound porch. Jacob had been looking forward to it, hoping a change of scene might ease the strain. He'd even picked up a bottle of Allison's dad's favorite bourbon as a gesture. The drive over was quiet, Allison scrolling her phone while Jacob navigated the familiar roads. He tried to start a conversation, mentioning a new client at work, but she cut him off. "Can we not talk about numbers right now?" she said, eyes still on her screen. He nodded, gripping the wheel a little tighter. The barbecue was lively, kids running through sprinklers, classic rock humming from a Bluetooth speaker, the air thick with the smell of ribs and sweet tea. Allison's family was warm, but Jacob always felt like an outsider. Her dad clapped him on the back. Her mom asked about his job, but Allison steered the conversation away whenever he spoke. Lauren, Abby, and Sophie were there too, sprawled on lawn chairs, sipping spiked lemonade. Lauren made a quip about Jacob's button-up shirt. "What? No tie today, Jake?" And the group laughed. Allison didn't join in, but she didn't defend him either. He smiled, pretending it didn't land, and busied himself flipping burgers. As the sun dipped low, casting golden light over the yard, Allison suggested a detour on the way home. "There's this spot by the coast I used to go to in high school," she said, her voice softer than it had been all day. "It's not far. Let's swing by just for fun." Jacob glanced at her, surprised by the warmth in her tone. Maybe this was a chance to reconnect, to find a piece of the Allison he'd fallen for. "Sure," he said, a flicker of hope in his chest. Lauren, Abby, and Sophie piled into the back of their SUV, already tipsy and loud, blasting a pop playlist from Sophie's phone. Jacob drove, Allison beside him, her hand brushing his knee for the first time in weeks. He let himself believe things might be turning around. The coastal road was dark, lined with marsh grass and the occasional flicker of a distant porch light. Jacob drove, the SUV's headlights cutting through the humid Charleston night. Allison's playlist thumped, her friends singing off-key in the back. He felt like a chauffeur, invisible despite being at the wheel. Allison was quiet now, staring out the window, her earlier warmth gone. "Almost there?" he asked, trying to keep things light. She shrugged. "Close enough." Lauren leaned forward, her voice sly. "Jake, you ever do anything spontaneous, or is that against your spreadsheet rules?" Abby and Sophie snickered. Jacob forced a chuckle, his jaw tight. He was used to their jabs, but tonight they felt sharper, like they were building something. The road narrowed, pavement giving way to gravel. Jacob expected a scenic overlook, maybe a boardwalk or a pier where Allison used to hang out. Instead, she pointed to a random stretch of nothing, just a dirt shoulder flanked by reeds. "Here's good," she said, her tone oddly flat. He pulled over, confused but compliant, and cut the engine. The music stopped, leaving only the hum of crickets and the faint lap of water somewhere beyond the marsh. "This the spot?" he asked, glancing at Allison. She didn't meet his eyes. "Yeah, let's stretch our legs." Jacob stepped out, the gravel crunching under his sneakers. The air was thick, salty, and warm, the kind of low-country night that clung to your skin. He assumed they'd all get out, maybe walk to the water, but the back door stayed shut. Allison leaned out her window. "You go ahead, Jake. You look like you need some air." Her voice had an edge, like she was daring him. He hesitated, a prickle of unease in his gut. "You coming?" he asked. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. In a sec, before he could say more, Abby whispered something in the back, and Allison's door slammed shut. The engine roared to life. Jacob spun around, his heart lurching as the SUV's tires spit gravel. "Hey!" he shouted, stepping toward the car, but Allison floored it. The taillights shrank, her laughter, high and cruel, mixing with Lauren's cackle and Abby's whoop. Sophie's voice was quieter, almost drowned out, but he caught it. "Oh my God, we did it!" Then they were gone, the road empty, the night swallowing their sound. Jacob stood there, stunned, his breath shallow. His hands patted his pockets, empty. His phone, his wallet, his keys, all in the car. Allison had asked for his phone earlier to fix the playlist, and he'd handed it over without a thought. Now it was clear. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment joke. It was planned. The realization hit like a punch, stealing his air. He stared down the road, willing the headlights to reappear, for Allison to swerve back, laughing, saying it was all a game. But the road stayed dark. Minutes passed, maybe 10, maybe 20. He didn't move, his mind racing, replaying every moment of the night, every jab, every glance. How had he not seen this coming? The barbecue played back in his head. Lauren's smirk when she'd mocked his shirt. Abby's loud sigh when he'd tried to join their conversation about a music festival. Sophie's quiet stare, like she was studying him. And Allison, who'd barely looked at him all day, who'd brushed off his attempts to connect. He thought it was just another rough patch, that she was stressed from work, that her friends were just being their usual selves. But this was different. This was deliberate, a line crossed that he couldn't unsee. He started walking, not because he knew where to go, but because standing still felt like surrender. His sneakers scuffed the gravel, the sound rhythmic grounding. The night was heavy, clouds hiding the stars, the marsh's damp breath curling around him. Every rustle in the reeds made his pulse spike. Gator, snake, or just the wind? He didn't know. Headlights appeared in the distance, and he tensed, stepping off the road. The car sped by, its driver oblivious. Jacob kept walking, his shirt sticking to his back, his mind a tangle of hurt and disbelief. Hours later, his legs aching, he reached a gas station, its neon sign buzzing like a dying insect. The clerk, a bored teenager, barely looked up from his phone. Jacob asked to use the phone, but the kid shook his head. Payphone's out back, but it's busted. Defeated, Jacob slumped onto a curb outside, the concrete cold against his thighs. He thought of his parents, retired now in a small house an hour from Charleston. They'd always told him to stand tall, to work through problems. What would they say if they saw him now, abandoned by his own wife? As dawn broke, pale light spilling over the horizon, a pickup truck pulled into the lot. The driver, an older man with a gray beard and a faded Clemson cap, stepped out, eyeing Jacob. "You look like you've had a hell of a night, son," he said, his voice gruff but kind. Jacob managed a nod, too tired to lie. "Need a lift?" the man asked, jerking a thumb toward his truck. Jacob hesitated, then stood. "Yeah, thanks." He didn't know where he was going, but anywhere was better than here. As the truck rumbled to life, Jacob glanced back at the road, the weight of Allison's betrayal settling into his bones. But with it came a flicker of something new, resolve. He wasn't done yet. The pickup truck rattled along the coastal highway, the hum of the engine filling the silence. Jacob stared out the window, the blur of marshland and palmetto trees barely registering. The driver, Roy, didn't push for conversation, just sipped coffee from a thermos and kept his eyes on the road. Jacob's mind churned, replaying the moment Allison's SUV vanished, her laughter slicing through him. His hands clenched in his lap, the emptiness of his pockets a constant reminder. No phone, no wallet, no way to reach anyone. He felt unmoored, like a boat cut loose in a storm. Roy finally spoke, his voice low. "You running from something, or just lost?" Jacob glanced at him, the question hanging heavy. "Bit of both," he said after a pause. Roy nodded, like he'd heard that answer 100 times. "There's a town up ahead, Myrtle Beach. Got a diner, a shelter. You can figure your next step there." Jacob murmured a thanks, grateful for the man's quiet kindness. The truck's radio played soft country, and for the first time in hours, Jacob felt his shoulders loosen, just a fraction. Myrtle Beach was waking up when they arrived, the morning sun glinting off the ocean. Roy dropped him at a community center near the boardwalk, a low brick building with a sign that read, "Hope Haven. All welcome." Jacob thanked him again, and Roy waved it off. "Take care, kid. You're tougher than you look." The words lingered as Jacob pushed through the center's glass doors, the cool air of relief after the sticky morning heat. Inside, a woman in her 50s with a warm smile and a name tag reading Martha greeted him. She didn't pry, just handed him a bottle of water and pointed to a table with coffee and pastries. "Eat something," she said. "Then we'll talk." Jacob sat, the coffee bitter but grounding. Martha slid into the chair across from him, her eyes kind but sharp, like she could see the weight he carried. "You need a place to crash?" she asked. He nodded, his throat tight. She led him to a small room with a cot and clean linens, promising to check in later. Alone, Jacob lay down, staring at the ceiling. Sleep wouldn't come. His mind kept circling back to Allison, to Lauren's smirk, Abby's whoop, Sophie's quiet, "We did it." The betrayal wasn't just Allison's. It was all of them, a coordinated strike to humiliate him. Why? He'd spent years trying to be enough to fit into her world. What had he missed? That afternoon, Martha knocked, holding a stack of forms. "If you're staying, we'll need some info," she said. "And if you want work, I know a place." Jacob sat up, surprised. "Work?" She nodded. "Shoreline Shack. a cafe down by the pier. Owner's a friend. Always needs hands. Jacob took the forms, a spark of purpose flickering. He didn't have his ID or social security card, but Martha promised to help him get replacements. "You're not the first to start over," she said, her voice steady. "Won't be the last." The next day, Jacob walked to Shoreline Shack, a weathered spot with peeling paint and a neon sign shaped like a crab. The owner, Carla, was a no-nonsense woman in her 40s, her hair pulled back tight, a scar above one eyebrow. She sized him up, then tossed him an apron. "Dish pit's yours. Show up on time. Don't complain. We're good." Jacob nodded, rolling up his sleeves. The work was brutal, grease, heat, endless stacks of plates, but it was honest. For the first time in days, he felt useful, like he was building something, even if it was just a clean stack of dishes. Weeks passed, the rhythm of the cafe grounding him. He got a state ID, a cheap burner phone, a prepaid debit card. Martha helped him open a bank account, each step pulling him further from the man left on that road. He didn't talk about Allison, not to Martha, not to Carla, not to the other dishwashers who cracked jokes between shifts. But the hurt lingered, a bruise that ached when he was alone. One evening, after a double shift, he powered on his new phone and checked the voicemail. A message from his neighbor in Charleston. Left days ago, a package had arrived at their condo. Jacob called back, asking her to open it. Her voice faltered as she read the note inside. "You're too dull for her, Jake. Sorry." It was signed by Sophie. The words hit like a slap. Sophie, the quiet one, had been part of it. Maybe the architect. The note wasn't an apology. It was a taunt, proof they planned to break him. Jacob's hands shook as he deleted the message, his anger flaring hot and sharp. He paced the small room at Hope Haven, the cot creaking under him. This wasn't just a cruel prank. It was a message. They wanted him gone, out of Allison's life, out of their way. But why go so far? What had he done to deserve this? The questions gnawed at him, but one thing was clear. He wouldn't let them win. He'd fight back, not with fists, but with something stronger. He didn't know how yet, but the resolve was there, burning brighter than the hurt. Jacob's days at Shoreline Shack settled into a grueling but steady rhythm. The cafe's chaos, clanging pots, shouted orders, the sizzle of shrimp on the grill, kept his mind from spiraling. He scrubbed dishes until his hands were raw, mopped floors slick with grease, and hauled trash bags to the dumpster under the Myrtle Beach sun. The work was punishing, but it gave him purpose, a tether to something real. Carla, the owner, noticed his quiet diligence and started giving him extra shifts. "You don't whine," she said one day, tossing him a clean apron. "That's rare." Jacob nodded, a faint pride warming his chest. He was rebuilding piece by piece. Martha at Hope Haven became his anchor. She helped him navigate the paperwork to replace his social security card and birth certificate, her calm efficiency cutting through the bureaucracy. When he got his first paycheck, he opened a bank account and bought a used backpack from a thrift store, stuffing it with essentials, a toothbrush, deodorant, a few t-shirts. He moved out of the shelter into a tiny studio apartment a block from the beach, its walls stained and its pipes rattling, but it was his. For the first time in months, he had a key, a door that locked, a place to call home. His burner phone stayed mostly off, a deliberate choice. He didn't want to hear from Allison or her friends, didn't want their voices pulling him back to that night on the Charleston Road. But one evening, after a long shift, he powered it on to check his bank balance. A voicemail waited, time-stamped a week ago. It was from a Charleston area code, unfamiliar. He hesitated, then played it. A man's voice, clipped and professional. "Mr. Reed, this is Daniel Harper, attorney. I'm handling your wife's divorce filing. Please contact me." Jacob's stomach dropped. Divorce. He'd known it was coming, but the reality stung, sharp and cold. He called Harper the next morning, his hands sweaty around the phone. The lawyer was blunt. Allison had filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences, and was seeking half their condo's value, plus alimony. Jacob's jaw tightened. Half the condo. He'd paid the down payment from his savings, worked overtime to cover the mortgage while Allison built her career. And alimony? She earned more than he did. Harper's tone softened. "She's claiming emotional distress, says you abandoned the marriage." Any chance you've got evidence to counter that? Jacob's mind flashed to the note from Sophie. You're too dull for her, Jake. Sorry. It was still in his backpack, folded in a notebook. He told Harper about the night on the road, the stolen phone and wallet, the coordinated betrayal. That's something, Harper said. If you can prove it was planned, it could change the case. Dig up anything, texts, emails, witnesses. Jacob hung up, his pulse racing. This wasn't just a divorce. It was a fight for his dignity, for the life he'd built. He wouldn't let Allison rewrite their story to paint him as the villain. He started small, requesting copies of his phone records from before that night. The carrier confirmed Allison had used his phone to send texts to Lauren and Abby hours before the barbecue, though the content was unavailable. It wasn't much, but it was a thread to pull. He contacted his neighbor in Charleston, asking if she'd seen anything odd. She hesitated, then admitted she'd overheard Allison and Sophie talking in the condo's lobby days before, laughing about teaching Jake a lesson. Jacob's blood ran hot. A lesson. That's what they called leaving him stranded, humiliated, broken. Harper suggested hiring a private investigator to track digital footprints, social media, emails, anything that might show collusion. It was expensive, draining Jacob's savings, but he agreed. Days later, the investigator found a deleted group chat on Lauren's public Instagram, recovered through a glitch. It was vague but damning. Allison writing, "He'll freak, but it'll be worth it," and Abby replying, "Just make sure he's got no way back." Sophie had liked the messages but stayed silent. Jacob stared at the screenshots, his anger now a focused, burning clarity. They'd planned to erase him, to push him out of Allison's life like he was nothing. The legal battle hit a snag when Allison's lawyer argued the evidence was circumstantial. Harper warned Jacob the case could stall, that Allison might win by default if they couldn't tie the chat directly to that night. Jacob felt the ground shift beneath him, the old helplessness creeping back. But then a break, Sophie. The investigator tracked her down, now working at a different PR firm. Jacob reached out, leaving a voicemail. "I know what you did, Sophie. I have the note. Talk to me, or I take it to court." Hours later, she called back, her voice shaky. "I didn't want to go that far," she said. "I'll help you. Just don't ruin me." Sophie sent Harper a sworn statement, admitting the group had planned to scare Jacob into leaving Allison, believing he'd give up and disappear. She'd written the note out of guilt, hoping he'd move on. It was enough. Jacob sat in his apartment, the ocean's murmur outside, and felt a weight lift. He wasn't just fighting for money or property. He was fighting for truth, for the man he'd been and the one he was becoming. The court date loomed, and for the first time, Jacob felt ready, not just to win, but to reclaim himself. 18 months after that night on the Charleston Road, Jacob stood behind the counter at Shoreline Shack, now the cafe's manager. The Myrtle Beach sun poured through the windows, glinting off the polished tabletops he'd helped refinish. The place had grown busier, its crab cakes and hush puppies drawing tourists and locals alike. Jacob wore a faded ball cap, his name tag reading manager, a quiet badge of his new life. He'd traded his old suits for jeans and t-shirts, his hands calloused from work, his smile easier. The condo, the spreadsheets, the weight of Allison's world, they felt like another man's story. His apartment, a cozy walk-up a block from the ocean, was home in a way the Charleston condo never was. Books lined the shelves, a mix of thrillers and self-help he'd picked up at a used bookstore. A small canvas hung above the couch, painted by Claire, his girlfriend of 6 months. Claire, a local artist with a laugh like wind chimes, had met Jacob at the cafe, sketching customers over coffee. She saw him, not the Mr. Spreadsheets Allison mocked, but the man who listened, who showed up, who cared. They spent evenings on the beach, sharing takeout and stories, her warmth grounding him in a way he hadn't known he needed. The divorce case had ended 3 months ago. Sophie's statement, paired with the recovered group chat and neighbors' testimony, tipped the scales. The judge ruled Allison's actions as intentional emotional harm, denying her alimony and her claim to the condo. Jacob sold the place, splitting the proceeds evenly to avoid further fights, and used a share to pay off legal fees and settle into Myrtle Beach. Allison's lawyer tried to spin it, claiming she'd been misguided by her friends, but the court saw through it. Lauren and Abby faced no legal consequences, but their reputations took a hit when Sophie's statement leaked to a local gossip blog. Charleston's tight-knit social scene turned cold. Lauren's real estate listings slowed, and Abby's photography gigs dried up. Jacob didn't gloat. Winning wasn't about their downfall. It was about standing tall. He'd started volunteering at Hope Haven, helping new arrivals with paperwork or just listening. One night, he shared his story with a group of shelter residents, his voice steady as he described the road, the note, the fight. "You don't have to stay broken," he told them. "You choose who you become." Martha, watching from the back, gave him a nod, her eyes proud. That moment, more than the court victory, felt like closure. One afternoon, as Jacob tallied inventory at the cafe, the bell above the door jingled. He looked up, and his breath caught. Allison stood there, flanked by Lauren and Abby. No Sophie. Allison's hair was shorter, her face drawn, the confidence he'd once loved now brittle. Lauren's smirk was gone, replaced by a nervous glance. Abby fidgeted, avoiding his eyes. They looked smaller, like the weight of their choices had finally settled. The cafe was quiet, the lunch rush over, only a few regulars sipping coffee at the counter. "Jake," Allison said, her voice soft, almost pleading. "Can we talk?" He didn't flinch, didn't let the old hurt rise. He reached under the counter, pulled out a plain envelope, and slid it across to her. She frowned, opening it. Inside was a printed receipt, $75, the exact cost of a one-way bus ticket from Charleston to Myrtle Beach. "That's what you owe me," he said, his tone even, final. Allison's eyes widened, her lips parting, but no words came. Lauren scoffed. "Seriously, Jake? This is petty." He didn't look at her, just held Allison's gaze. "It's what you left me with. We're done." He turned and walked to the kitchen, the swinging door closing behind him. Through the small window, he watched them linger, Allison clutching the envelope, her face crumpling. Lauren argued, gesturing wildly, while Abby stood frozen, hugging her purse. They left without ordering, their car peeling out of the lot. Jacob exhaled, the air leaving him clean, unburdened. He didn't feel triumph, just peace, a stillness that had been hard-won. That night, he sat with Claire on the beach, the waves a soft rhythm under the stars. She leaned against him, her sketchpad open to a half-finished drawing of the pier. "You okay?" she asked, sensing the shift in him. He nodded, his hand finding hers. "Yeah, I'm good." She smiled, squeezing his fingers. "You're more than good, Jake. You're you." He looked out at the ocean, the horizon endless, and felt it, freedom. Not from Allison or her friends, but from the man he'd been, the one who'd let their laughter define him. The next week, a post appeared on a Charleston community forum, anonymous but unmistakably Sophie's. She apologized for her part, calling out the toxic games she'd played, urging others to own their mistakes. It went viral locally, sparking debates about accountability. Jacob didn't comment, didn't need to. He was too busy living, managing the cafe, planning a weekend hike with Claire, helping a new guy at Hope Haven with his resume. The road, the note, the laughter, they were shadows now, fading in the light of who he'd become. This was his life, earned and whole, and he wouldn't trade it for anything.